drafted in 1992 and had played for respective organizations, Chiefs, Falcons, and playing his majority of his career with the Buffalo Bills. So joining us in talking Buffalo Bills football and Josh Allen, here's our good friend Jerry Ostroski joining us here on the show. I think it's great. Honestly, in the last couple of days, I've had the pleasure of having back-to-back offensive linemen, really just, talking with them and kind of, diving deep into their minds, what it truthfully means to play right on the offensive line, protecting the franchise quarterback. So when I look at this with the Buffalo Bills and going to your career and experience, I mean, Josh Allen is a heck of a player. I mean, he's one of one. He's big, athletic, has a great arm, but we know that like all these franchise quarterbacks, you got to have a very strong offensive line in front of him to ensure him protection, give him at least time to really read the defense, and even provide holes for guys like James Cook to run through. People didn't think Buffalo was going to be that team last year. I took everyone's stock and I said, you're out of your mind. I still have this team winning the division. I still have them going to the playoffs. But, man, when I know that was a crushing blow in the AFC Championship. But this year, Jerry, this has to be the juice and motivation for them that they really want to get into the big dance, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Snake. It's one of those things where when you look at the Buffalo Bills, and obviously Josh Allen is the biggest factor of their success. And what the Bills have done for him offensively is, and you talked about it at the start of the show, or start of the segment anyway, is the fact that they've got a world-class offensive line. It's a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. And when you look at Buffalo, everybody thinks Josh Allen, they're going to throw the ball over the place. They really have made a concerted effort to run the football. They are a running football team first. That's why this James Cook situation is so unsettling for many, because he's such a key piece to that running game. And, you look at Josh Allen, all the stuff he does, he's not a on-time quarterback. He is a off-schedule guy. He just absolutely thrives in off-schedule throws. And this season anyway was a historic season offensively for the Bills, because Josh Allen played well within the offense. He didn't have to do too much. He didn't try to make too many, Bills Mafia makes a joke, how many times a game does Josh need to put his cape on? And because he's Superman, he's that guy. And this season, he really stayed within the offense through a lot of underneath stuff. And you talked about Shakir to start this segment, a guy that he goes to repeatedly in third downs and big play situations. And, running the football and all those things, they were able to control stuff, and they had a historic season offensively. The biggest thing for the Bills to get over the hump is the defense. The defense was not near good enough. They led the league in turnovers as far as taking the ball away and not giving the ball to the opponent, but they have to get better, and you've seen that this offseason. Not only did they make investments in free agency on that side of the ball, on the coaching staff on that side of the ball, but their draft was a majority offense. I think out of 8 picks, 6 of them were defensive players. So they know, and if you look at OTAs and minicamp, they know they have to get better defensively, and they're desperately trying to do that.
Yeah, and so here's what's interesting about this, Jerry, is because last year, so a lot of people, what I defended Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills on was this, is because people were thinking, oh, Josh wouldn't be himself if it wasn't for Stephon Diggs. I disagree. All I know is that you got a young kid that if it hadn't been for Brian Dable back then, before he took the Giants job, to clean up the mistakes and to make him a more accurate and much more poised quarterback, we wouldn't even be talking about this type of predicament. But here's the deal. You get rid of Gabe Davis and you get rid of Stephon Diggs. Now you're dealing with Khalil Shakir, a young rookie in Florida State, and Keon Coleman. And so this year, I thought it was tremendous that everybody kind of wrote them off. But here's what's funny about this, Jerry, and I'm sure you saw this too, was I looked at a percentage scale, and this was what was on a post, was with Stephon Diggs, the Bills were making it 80%. Without Diggs in the lineup, they were only cut down by a 10th percentile.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, it left me to believe, yeah, you go on ahead and you throw this narrative about, Stephon Diggs, but I trust Josh Allen. The offense flows through him, and as long as he can take control and he can put the team on his back and move forward to get them to score some offensive points, I think that was kind of the deal, right? It was showing how he can overcome that adversity and yet still be that leader Buffalo knows that they needed in crunch time.
Right, exactly. When they moved Diggs, I think they lost that season. They lost about 57% of their targets in their wide receiver room. They bring in a couple of guys. Of course, they draft Keon Coleman in the second, who started to show really good things before he had the wrist injury. They bring in Amari Cooper on a trade with the Cleveland Browns. Didn't really do too much. Had some injury stuff. Gabe Davis, while a guy that was, he had some big catches and made some touchdowns. He was a guy that was limited. He's a stiff athlete. He doesn't run his routes very fluid. He's more of a straight line receiver. And really, if you want to look at a style of play, he's really good. He'd be great in Kansas City because he's a clear out receiver. He can run clear out routes for Worthy and the guys underneath. So, you have to look at it this way. Josh, and I said about it a little bit when my first answer. Josh is not a on time, small window type of quarterback. He's very visual. He wants to see it, then he throws it, and he relies on that big arm and his athleticism. So to try to force the ball to what everybody wants to call a wide receiver one or a ball dominant wide receiver doesn't necessarily work with him. So we've got this mantra now in Buffalo, which we hang on to. I think it's more of a marketing slogan than anything, and it helps the GM kind of explain why he hasn't gone out to get another Stephon Diggs type receiver. And that mantra is everybody eats, right? You don't know who's going to get the ball. And obviously they awarded Shakir with the contract this offseason. They know that he can produce. They want him to get the ball. They're desperately trying to get Kincaid more involved. He had more, his injury situation last year was bigger than people let on. And he did get open. Josh had some issues accuracy wise. If you look at analytics, getting him the ball, on target. So they're an everybody eats type of offense. But again, I go back to these two things: Josh's ability to make plays off time, off schedule, and the fact that they want to control the ball and they want to run the football. This is a running team. I mean, hell, we get more jumbo sets than most people think. We put extra offensive linemen in the game, all those types of things. We draft Jackson Halls from Georgia Tech this season, who is a blocking tight end. So they want to control the clock, control the line of scrimmage, and run it. And that's why you're seeing, I think, the situation with James Cook. As much as we all want him to be in Buffalo, in Orchard Park after this season, you've got the starting center in Connor McGovern, and you got the starting right guard in Osiris Torrance that are coming up. Their contracts are coming up, and those are going to be hefty deals. Is this running game because of the ability of James Cook, or is this running game because of what we got up front? You know me. I played offensive line. I'm going to tell you straight up, it's because of the boys up front. If I was a GM, we would be really good up front on offensive line, and our front seven would be damn good on defense. We might be terrible everywhere else, but we're going to control the line of scrimmage. And I think that Brandon Beane and the administration kind of sees that same thing. Cook agrees to a contract that's worthy of what they think he does. I think they re-sign him. But if he sits on that $15 million a year and wants money like Barkley and Derrick Henry, he's probably playing somewhere else.
So talking about tight ends and going to your career, I mean, you played in an era where there was a lot of trench warfare. It was all ground and pound. And the importance of it is like you said, you wanted an extra lineman who can be that blocker and provide, whether somebody's out there being the Mike linebacker or edge or safety there. Because, I mean, we watch Kansas City all the time where they're playing those packages that Steve Spagnuolo does all the time. But how pivotal is that? I watch this Bills offensive line, and even with these tight ends, where you have both Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, and now you have Jackson Haas. So to me, it's like they love having that extra blocker. And even if you get a dual tight end set, right, you could have one being the blocker, the other one being that receiving tight end. I don't think we really have seen the quote unquote explosion out of Dalton Kincaid, but I think maybe in this up and coming season, there might be a little bit of some packages built up for him. So how pivotal is that to really have that supplementation there up and in the front, and then adding another extra weapon to Josh Allen's arsenal?
I think in Buffalo, it's of high importance because you've got a team that's really trying to build off of the running game with their, and go to their play action packages. And if you've got these extra guys, and that's why I think Halls is going to be really important for the Bills. Didn't come out of college as a premier pass receiver, came out as a premier blocker. But if you can play him as opposed to Alec Anderson, who's the extra offensive lineman, and still get the same benefits, now you got another receiver on the field, which sets up your play action. Kincaid is the guy that's built more to stretch the field. He's a former basketball player, started out at the University of San Diego before transferring to Utah. He's not a big guy. He's about 240, 245 pounds. He's more of a long, lean guy. But the thing that Kincaid does for you is you can get in power sets without taking players off the field. You can then line him up in a slot, and you can get some mismatches because you're hiding what you want to do by personnel, because he can do so many different things. And I think that's where the Bills see his benefit. Last season, like I said, he had the PCL injury that really affected him. Then he had this weird skin lesion situation that happened when he fell on the leg, and it tore his skin, and it was just it's hard to describe. So he was banged up a little more than people want to let on. But he's got to get. When Bean and McDermott talked at the end of the season after the defeat to the Chiefs in the playoffs, he was one of the guys they spotlighted as, we've got to get him healthy. We got to get him stronger. We got to get him going. So, they think highly of Dalton Kincaid. They traded up in front of the Dallas Cowboys to get him 2 years ago. And I would expect them to continue to try to get him involved. But that's the biggest thing in Buffalo. You've got these tight ends that can catch the ball, but they can also block. And you can hide personnel packages because you can play multiple sets with one group. So you put the defense, in harm's way, put stress on them because maybe they got linebackers and stuff having to cover that normally wouldn't cover because you can't get substitutes on and off the field.
So explain to me about this James Cook situation, because we know that a lot of these players, in training camp, everybody's going to obviously speak out. TJ Watt, Terry McLaurin, lots of these other players, they're speaking out amongst a new contract. And to me, I think James Cook, he's a very good player. I do believe that he adds, because that was one thing Buffalo, I know they needed to fix, was they needed to have a healthier run game. They needed a very good rotation to at least allow for Josh Allen to not always have to put his Superman cape on all the time and have to run and throw. Right. I think now you have him be that core bell cow running back. But of course, like every single player that's up and in this, in this league, they obviously want theirs. They want the bag. But to me, with James Cook, we know the running back position is difficult because they're more prone to injury. They take majority of a lot of these hits because they're going right at it. So how have you evaluated James Cook throughout, this mini camp and what Buffalo Bills are going to do? Because I'm assuming they are going to get a deal done, but it is going to be done at the right price.
I think you have to look at James Cook and what's going on, kind of like a baseball player, a guy that's is a 5-skill guy or a 5-star guy. He can do it all. And when you look at Cook, they draft him in the second round. And when you watch Brandon Beane have the post, 5 minutes or 10 minutes after the pick, he comes up, meets with the media, they talk about the latest pick. They drafted James Cook to be a third down back. They wanted him to catch the ball out of the backfield and be involved highly in the passing game. And then all of a sudden, he turns into this amazing zone runner. And that's the biggest thing he brings to the Bills roster is the way he runs the zone, his patience, his ability to see the whole front and hop behind blocks and those types of things. And he's kind of struggled in the third down role that they actually drafted him to do. He had some big drops. He was wide open, had some big drops as a rookie. Last year, he got a little bit better, but Ty Johnson emerged himself as a third down player because of this. While Buffalo does not ask their backs to stay in very often to block, when they do, if you look at James Cook throughout his career, he's not been very good. He's not a very good pass protector as a running back. So going back to that baseball scenario, if I'm going to give a back, elite money, like Derrick Henry money or Saquon Barkley money, and those to Josh Jacobs type money, all of a sudden you're like, well, how do I justify doing that for a guy that plays around 50% of the plays? Yeah. When Derrick Henry's playing 70-some% of the plays, Barkley's playing 70-80% of the plays, and now I've got a back that wants money like they get, but he's only on the field 50% of the time. And what's funny is James Cook did not come to any of the OTA stuff. Yeah. And there was a big question mark whether he's going to be at minicamp or not. And he did show up to minicamp. And he did sit down in front of the press and answered questions. And he made a comment about, hey, I can't control, how often I'm on the field or the percentage I'm on the field. I just, when I'm out there, I'm doing well and I'm doing my best, which leads you to believe that he's heard a little bit of the outside noise and some of the things, the negatives being said about him as far as percentage and that type of stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing, Jake, as far as what's holding the Bills back from giving him, say, what he wants, which is $15 million a year. How do you do that for a guy that's a 2-down back?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you can do that.
Yeah, no, 100%. This might make you laugh, but I look at this situation and I can only just think about it this way: is the only person who really would do this kind of move is his brother, Dalvin. We all remember how that situation went down in Minnesota.
And Delvin has jumped in on social media as well, and he's upped it to $20 million a year. So yeah, he's definitely getting some advice from his big brother.
So let's talk about the newcomers here for a second. Okay. The Bills, I think the Bills had a very impressive offseason and draft because they addressed a lot on defense. They recognized, and I think Brandon Beane recognized, you know what, we need to get better on defense. I mean, I love Tyron Johnson, and I do love Taylor Rapp. And they went and upgraded. They went and got Maxwell Hairston, who I think is a very good kid. I think, to me, he is the ideal type of spotter out there that watches the football, and he plays right to its spot. So it allows him now to go with his speed and his eye coordination and awareness to where he can go and get the football or go get a tackle. Then we know he's hurt right now, but with Joey Bosa, we know there's a question mark up from there. But as long as he's associated with a very good pass rush, that kind of gives him a little bit more of an edge. So when you look at these new additions, and the other one, too, that I am really excited for is Josh Palmer. I think bringing him in, I mean, I understood why they brought in Amari Cooper because they wanted to give experience to Keon Coleman to come into year 2, and he's much more productive. But now you add in a supplemental factor of a red zone guy like Josh Palmer who can go up, get it, and he's got great hands to do so. So talking about these new additions, I mean, Brandon Beane, he's looking at this whole thing and he's like, these are the guys that we know we're doubling down on in order for us to make it there to eventually make a Super Bowl appearance for the first time in a very long time. Are these going to be the guys that really can help to move the needle?
We'll start with Bosa, and I think the biggest thing about Bosa is, and we all know his injury history, but he's a tremendous player, former NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, and I don't think that the organization, while they want him on the field, I think they're looking at 40, 45 plays a game. He did get a little dinged up in OTAs already with a calf strain, but he was out there during minicamp doing drills and things like that. But when you look at Bosa, I think this is a guy that you're not worried about the first half of the season. You're looking at him as a closer. This is a guy that you really want to ramp up, keep healthy, maybe limit his reps and his plays. And in the second half of the year, Week 8 is when it really kind of gasses up for the Bills. It's after their first 6 games, they got the Ravens right off the bat, Sunday Night Football at home. Then they've got 5 opponents after that aren't terribly tough, an off week, and then it's Kansas City at home. Then you've got Tampa Bay coming in. You've got Houston on the road on a Thursday night. There's the second Miami game. So there's a lot of bigger names in that latter half. Let's get him to the second half of the season and make sure he's healthy for the playoffs because, look, San Diego is trying to play him as a stand-up outside linebacker for the last couple of years. That's not what he does. Bosa's a hand-on-the-ground, get-off-the-ball type of player. And now in the 4-2-5 that the Bills play, we'll be able to utilize his strengths, and I think that'll be better for him. As far as the receivers go, you got Joshua Palmer, who like you, Jake, I was very, very happy with that pickup. A very polished route runner, a guy that can get open on his own, can get separation through route running, sure-handed and all of that. Then you add a guy like Elijah Moore, former second-round pick of the Jets, who had to play with terrible quarterback play in New York. Then what do they do to reward that? They send him to Cleveland and stick him in another horrible situation. And now all of a sudden he's playing with arguably the best or second-best quarterback in the league. Between his skill set and Joshua Palmer's, the things that excites me, we didn't have that guy that could get separation, get downfield, and all of our pass catching, our passing, our route running was very compressed. I think these guys are going to create space underneath because of their skill sets. And now we go to Keon Coleman, who figured out this offseason, he probably heard the noise a little bit. He wasn't fast enough. He didn't separate enough, all this. So he loses weight and tries to be something he's not. And now this offseason, he's going back to being the old Keon Coleman. He comes in and he's bulked up. He's thick again. He's ready to be a bully because that's what he is. He's a bully.
Yeah.
He can put his hands on corners, get him out of the way. And that's how he creates separation. I mean, hell, the other day, DeMar Hamlin had a charity basketball game and he scored 60 points. I'm not saying that's amazing because of who he was probably playing against, but it just shows you his competitiveness and what type of athlete he is. Because even in the charity game, you got to have some kind of athleticism to score 60. So I think that Palmer and Elijah Moore really help out Keon Coleman. Keon's understanding of who he is and going back to what made him the second-round pick for the Bills last year. All those pieces, and then you add Bosa to the mix. And don't forget Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt as well, who we picked up, who, in a very odd way, the Bills knew about Hoyt, didn't know about Ogunjobi. Both those guys are on 6-game PED suspensions. So Bosa's going to have to hold things down with the rest of the guys and the massive amount of rookie defensive linemen we drafted as well in those first 6 before they get back. So, yeah, I think they all fit very, very well within the puzzle of the Buffalo Bills.
So, I like Sean McDermott personally because I do think he brings a culture to Buffalo where it really did turn a lot of things around. I mean, I watched, even just watching, the Bills up and into the 90s. And, my big thing is that we know the narrative of it. You've heard it many, many times, even in your career being there, is that the Bills go to 4 straight, never got the job done. I know Buffalo fans hate hearing that narrative, but with Sean McDermott, I think he's tough. He's confident in some ways. But I got to be honest, Jerry, there has been spurts that even in the playoffs, and I'm sure you've even mentioned about this as well, where in times where you really got to be clutch and in times where you really got to grind out the situations and scenarios, you cannot afford to be conservative at the worst parts. Now, I know certain situations that usually lead up to that point are always never the best feeling up and in the world. But this year, with Sean McDermott, because he got close to an AFC championship game, unfortunately didn't come up with it against Kansas City. And we know that is one team in the AFC everyone in the AFC's got to knock off. But with McDermott, I think adding in a lot of these defensive helps. Does this kind of put him right now in the spotlight where Brandon Beane's like, here's your defensive guys. We got some supplemental offensive players. Now go and do the job to get us on top. Is that the spotlight we're hearing about Sean McDermott?
I think there's a little bit of that, but I think McDermott has actually really grown as a head coach. We're going in, I think, year 9 of Sean McDermott in Buffalo. And one thing he's done is embrace today's athlete. The days of do what I say and you don't have any say coming back, and the guys that are more running things like a dictator. He's not that guy. And I think maybe he was a little bit at first, but he's learned. And if you look at the Bills, the one thing that McDermott has built in this locker room that I think is so awesome is he allows guys to express their personalities within a team concept.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, we had a Mac Hollins showing up to games last year. I mean, he showed up to Kansas City in the playoff game with an animal from the Muppets costume on, right? He shows up in flip-flop or no flip-flops. He doesn't wear shoes. Snow outside, he's in beach gear. I mean, everybody, all these guys, even Josh Allen, very light personality guys. They express themselves, but it's all within this team concept that McDermott's built. But, it's funny. I think the biggest other maturation process of McDermott was the fact that he was overly involved, I believe, in his early part of his head coaching career. He was in the middle of the defense. He was in the middle of the offense. He was trying to do too much. And now he's relying on his coaching staff to coach. He's letting his assistants do their job. He's becoming more of a game manager. And I think that's the biggest thing you see right now in Buffalo. Last year, they didn't lose that game because of McDermott. Now, obviously, we all know the buck stops at the head coach. That's where it always goes. And he probably took a little bit more pressure because we know that the defense was the reason they didn't get it done last year. Just weren't good enough. He was a former D coordinator. Hell, he was the former D coordinator in Buffalo. But I think he's done a good job of kind of separating himself from those things. Bobby Babbitt Jr., the D coordinator, is doing a great job. I really like to hire this offseason of Ryan Nielsen, former defense coordinator of the Saints, a guy that all of a sudden has come in and now taken over the defensive line. We got 3 defensive line coaches now, like we got 3 DB coaches, because in that 4-2-5, you go as the front goes, and there's a lot of pressure on that defensive line group. Nielsen's coaching them guys up. He's coaching pressure packages. So they're spreading the responsibility around across the staff for different areas of the game, and McDermott's kind of stepped back and is allowing those guys to work, and I think that's the biggest thing. He's just not overly involved. I mean, he's involved, and we all know this, but you know what I'm trying to say. He's not sticking his nose in things on game day as much as he used to. He's letting those guys do their thing.
So a side question before I ask a final one before letting you go. I'm sure you watched the snippet of the radio show up and in Buffalo, but I just got to say that it made me laugh when I heard Brandon Beane just go off and literally talking about, with the Bills acquisitions and like everything else. He kind of, he put the radio show on the place, and it was just like reminding to a lot of Bills fans, like, look, you're asking a lot. And it's not like we're not hearing you, but it's like, you got to understand that, to me, it's like the pyramids were never made in a day. We know that it takes a lot of growing pains. We know it takes a lot of, a lot of these hard losses in order to turn those into W's, to where now you're in the big stage, and that taste of victory is much more sweeter than, just everything else that they had to go through. I mean, like, watching that snippet, doesn't that kind of make you a little more impressed about Brandon Beane and what he speaks out about at this organization?
Well, what's funny about that, Jake, is I actually do a bi-weekly podcast on the Locked On Network with 2 guys, one guy named Joe Marino and the other one's named Jeremy White.
Yeah.
And Jeremy White just happened to be the guy that took the brunt of the Brandon Beane tirade on his radio show about 20 minutes before we did our show.
Oh, no.
So if you want to talk about perfect timing in the content creation world, it was outstanding.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of it to me was some of it was grandstanding. I mean, I get it. I get where Beane's coming from. I had my blow-ups. I mean, you get tired of hearing the same damn thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's a lot of truth to the fact that the Bills have not gone out and replaced Diggs with a true number 1 receiver. Right. And the reason why is not because the Bills have just put both arms and fully and bear hug this whole everybody eats concept, which is what Beane has kind of, hung his hat on. Why I said earlier, it's a very good marketing scheme. But if you look at what's going on in Buffalo, and you understand this following sports, when your quarterback takes up 20, 25% of the cap, okay, and then you're expected to sign these other dudes, somewhere along the line, some group's going to have to suffer, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the Bills and the way they run the ball and everything, they feel they can be very effective not going out. They've tried the ball dominant wide receiver thing with Diggs, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So you've got to be very careful of what you do, especially in the fact you can't pay everybody. So really, that's kind of what it comes down to. Is it because Beane has just sold out on this everybody eats mantra? You can say that, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's trying to manage a very tight cap, and the Bills cap is very, very tight. That's why I love the Joshua Palmer signing. I think it's perfect. I mean, you got a guy, everybody thinks, oh yeah, he's coming from Los Angeles. Hell, Joshua Palmer grew up about 2.5 hours away from Orchard Park in Toronto. He's a Toronto kid. I mean, he understands cold weather and all those things. And so I love that signing. I love the Elijah Moore signing. And I think the biggest thing that Beane has done really, really well, and it's kind of Belichick-like, and I thought it was the one thing that Bill did so well when he was the head coach of the Patriots. He never fell in love with his own. He never overpaid for an aging vet and then got diminished returns because he's paying too much money for a guy that, no fault of their own, Father Time catches all of us. And he was able to also, like the Junior Seau signing that he made, he was able to identify those vets that were really, really good players and say, look, I know you used to do all this. I don't need you to do all that. I need you to do these two things and do them very, very well. And I think that that's something that Beane's done a very good job of. He's gone and identified guys that maybe have been dinged up, like the Bosa situation. We just signed a linebacker from the Carolina Panthers, last name of Thompson, who's coming off an Achilles, coming off an Achilles injury, who will be a great backup for us, and who knows, might be thrust into a lot of playing time because that group hasn't been very healthy over the last so many years. But he's done a good job being able to get those types of guys in the building to provide a year or two of productivity with experience at a lower price. So, take that for what it is.
It's funny, and people think that like they haven't been through this situation and scenario before. Well, does anybody recall the time when Josh Allen had John Brown?
Right.
Okay, I certainly do.
Right.
I'm like,
right. Exactly.
Come on, man. We like, you this is why context is always just so important with it.
Right.
Final question here for you. So competition is brewing up in this AFC East. I think they got something special in New England with Mike Vrabel, what he's trying to put together and trying to assure that he protects his franchise quarterback, Drake May. I feel like Miami, both those guys, Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, they're fighting for their jobs because if they don't make the playoffs again, I think the kettle's coming. And then for the Jets, I mean, you turn around and look at it, it's the Jets. But I do think that, Aaron Glenn, former player, playing in that organization kind of brings a little bit of juice, but they definitely got a lot of very good defensive guys. And I mean, I love if they only just had the one piece. They're so talented that I really look at this as like, this is such a Super Bowl looking roster that all they need is just the one guy. So looking at this competition, Jerry, and what Buffalo now has to prepare for, I still have this team favored to win the division, but this is not going to come in as an easy price, though, this time, is it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's a lot like the Chiefs in the AFC West. I mean, you got Denver getting better, Harbaugh being in Los Angeles, they're only going to get better. So, having 6 games a year that we're just kind of chalk them up as wins isn't going to be as easy as it used to be. As far as Miami goes, I just think that's a sinking ship. I can't remember who it was, but somebody recently said down there was a player, I think it's a defensive end that they signed a year ago that was out of last year due to injury. Last year we were going to, it was all about buying in, and we dipped our toe in the water, but we really didn't go all the way in. But this year is going to be different. And I'm like, whatever. I mean, if that's what you got to say about it, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. You got the Jets who, before Aaron Rodgers, fooled us all. That to me last year was my pick for the team that was going to be the biggest problem for the Bills to beat.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of defensive ability, like you said. And then Aaron Rodgers thinking that even though he wasn't the old Aaron Rodgers, could still perform at a good enough level to get these receivers the ball. And that never happened. But, Aaron Glenn, I respect Aaron Glenn a lot. And I don't want to age Aaron Glenn, but we were both seniors playing. I actually played him as a senior in college. He was at A&M. I was at Tulsa. But when you look at Aaron Glenn, his biggest issue is he's got to change the culture of that building. And it's not just the team. He's got to change the culture of the administration as well. Woody Johnson and his kids and the rest of them. There's too much craziness going on. And if he does that with the talent they have defensively, they could spoil some teams and spoil some games. Obviously, I think the biggest threat to the Bills would be New England. The one thing that I wonder about with New England, because they've got talent everywhere, young talent. I think Drake May is as close to Josh Allen as there is in the league. Now, he's got to prove it, but he's got all those abilities that Josh has. But the thing about it is Vrabel. What is Vrabel? And I look at coaches. Is Vrabel a guy that can go to an organization? Obviously, it's his second stop, and the guy that he emulates and worships in Belichick, he had a couple stops before he was successful with a very good quarterback. Nobody wants to talk about him getting fired in Cleveland. But, is Vrabel a guy that can coach in one place for 15, 16, 20 years? Yeah. Or is he a reclamation guy? Is he a guy that you bring in to clean out the dead wood, get the enthusiasm back, get the good players in the building, and then maybe they finally get tired of his antics, the same speech gets old, and you've got to make a move, and he's left it much better than when he's gotten there. So I'm not sure yet on Mike. I love Mike. I played against Mike. He's a good dude. played, was a hard, tough-nosed player. But is he a guy that can be there for 15, 20 years, or is he a guy that's 5 years and moves on? So we'll see what happens. But no, New England their draft absolutely killed it. And then you got talent from last year. They're not going to be a pushover by no means.
No, I agree. And I like the fact that, like, at least, like, because he was well respected from just his interviews last year.
Right.
And all it took the right place, to come in, shape up a culture. We know that they've had dominance for 20 years,
right.
But now it's like it's time to turn the page. Now we got to focus on a new quarterback. So I really do expect this to where, New England gives you competition. I do. And it's funny because even when I looked at the Jets, with Robert Saleh, that defense was ferocious. It looked like a college sideline from there, and so I was like, okay, if only they could just get the consistency and the culture right, maybe that team might actually turn a new leaf. But I still believe in the Bills. I think the Bills have such a strong culture, Bills Mafia and the slamming tables. I mean, you can't get enough of that, right? So,
right.
Oh man, I can't wait for this season, man. But I appreciate you for coming on by here, Jerry. Always the absolute pleasure, man. And just to share your experience being up and on that offensive line and representing for the Buffalo Bills, that's got to be the best feeling up and into the world, right? You're getting closer and closer to an organization like that. I talk with many former players, and for them to be able to cover a team they played for, give their expertise and insight, just makes it all the worthwhile, especially in the sports industry.
Definitely. It's funny. I played in the last playoff game before the 17-year drought. So, there wasn't much to cheer about for 17 years. And then, Josh Allen gets drafted and the resurgence happens and the rest is history, But when you talk about it, one of the best things, if any good thing came out of COVID, it was content creation, and it was guys setting up stuff online and, communicating through different means. And, that's what led me to this. I'm a people person. I like to talk. I've done sports radio, probably will do more sports radio in the future. And, this gave me an avenue to do that. And I'm blessed. I grew up in Philadelphia. Full disclosure. I grew up in Philly. And when you grow up in Philly, you're a Philly sports fan.
Yep.
That's just how it is. And the Eagles, I still cheer for the Eagles. Maybe not quite as loud as I used to, but I do cheer for the Eagles. But no, it's been a blessing to be able to reconnect with a lot of people in Buffalo, go up there multiple times a year, and just really get to enjoy what is the Buffalo Bills in Western New York, because it's a special place. Everybody thinks about New York. All they want to talk about is New York City, which is fine. Don't go past Albany West. Just let Western New York for the rest of us to know about it. Just got back from there last week, and it was an awesome trip. So, no, I really appreciate you having me on. And if there's anything I can do for you in the future, please let me know. I'd love to come back on.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, pleasure's all mine, man. And that's the goal, man. That's the dream, is one day to eventually be on a radio station and a broadcast network. Because, to me, it's just, I'm just providing this for just all the diehard fans to have unbiased, balanced opinions, and at least, not just have my opinions, but I have great guests that come on here to share the same exact experiences. But former pro offensive lineman Jerry Ostroski, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate you for coming on by, man. Enjoy the rest of the week. And good luck the upcoming season for the Buffalo Bills, man. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate you, man. Go Panthers. Go check that game out. Game 6. That's where I'm going.
Let's go. Let's make it happen.
Later, man.
Take care, man. Yeah, it is such a great experience when you can get former pros on. And, that's the one thing that, like, even what makes it special to show.